And now, keeping up with the Hapsburgs.
From the delta to the falls, from the grotto to the newly constructed defense ministry building, nothing captures the rhythm of equatorial Fredonia like Cadre cigarettes. Never a rough puff with Cadre, sponsors of the committee program. And now, back with us once again for the 8th installment of Keeping Up with the Hapsburgs, our unique and uniquely in-depth look at the Hapsburg family is Hawley Brett. Thank you so much for being with us once again. How are you?
Hi, I'm really well. Thanks for having me.
Good. And I'm good. And this is good. And we're getting at something here. And I think this week we're really going to get to the heart of it. So I don't even want to stop you. I just want to say, Volume 8, take us away. And I believe where we were was the family was consolidating land, as they always are, acting as a bulwark against Ottoman, I guess they would probably think of it as encroachment into Europe. And I don't know, being the Hapsburgs. What am I forgetting?
Indeed. That is where we were. But today, I must admit that I've personally been having trouble keeping up with the Hapsburgs as much as I normally do. Right. There's only so much time in the day for research. And I have a newfound interest, perhaps you could say even passion for, the subject of prehistory. And as I've been learning more about ancient peoples and ancient sites, I have realized the profound relevance that this history has on all of our conversations. And I know that it might seem like we're going back in time, perhaps 12,000 years to the Neolithic.
I mean, I will say it feels a little bit like we're going backwards.
Yeah, well, I can assure you that we will be going forwards because there is a line that you can draw and that we must be able to draw, I think, between the Neolithic and modern times.
Is it going to involve the Habsburg nose? Is that going to be part of this?
It will. And
then
I
please
think
go ahead.
Also the Hapsburg castle, right? Because when we look, for example, at sites like Göbekli Tepe, right? So that was made in 10,000 BC. That's 12,000 years ago, right? This is much, much older than the pyramids. It's 7,000 years older than Stonehenge, right? So how are we supposed to understand, for example, a structure like the Habsburg castle if we can't understand the emergence of architecture as territory?
Were they? Are you saying they were in the same place? Is that the connection we're making, or is it more tenuous than that?
No. It's that we have to look at how architecture emerged in the early dawn of civilization.
Yikes.
Because that is how we can contextualize structures like the Habsburgs relied on during their legacy.
Okay, so I'll bite. Okay, what was the first structure?
So the first structure that we know of, the oldest large monolithic structure, is Göbekli Tepe. Now that is in modern day Turkey. And the first temples, we believe, are 12,000 years old. Although, believe it or not, only 5% of this site has actually been excavated. And it's possible that lower down in deeper layers of sediment, there are even older remains. We don't know yet. But what we do know is that this was a ritual site, and it had many strange components to it. So when we look at these sites, they had temples, and we know that they're temples because they look very different from any sites where people lived. And they were organized with 12 columns in a circle that related to
the columns, the circle. But for those of us who will be familiar with Engels' much shorter book than I think we're getting from you on this, is the point of this that to make the temple and to have a certain kind of politics that the temple has and maybe a surplus? Maybe did they find grain there? Was there evidence of farming, and was farming bad? I think our viewers want to know that.
Right.
Was there evidence of farming, and was it bad? Can we blame the farming?
That is a great, great question. And it actually brings me to this book that I've been reading. So here we have The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity.
Oh, geez, that looks longer than English.
Yeah, it's David Graeber and David Wengrow. It's pretty long. You can see I have bookmarks for where I am in the book as well as where I am in the notes, the end notes. It's very helpful so that I can easily
Are we going to have to do this whole thing to get to the Hapsburgs again?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think that this book is an urgent read, urgent commentary on today's time, and that I would recommend it universally, frankly. And I think that people will find it a page turner. It's exhilarating and thrilling, as prehistory always is. But they're particularly good writers on it, so it's accessible, I think, for a lay person. You don't have to be a history expert like me to appreciate the book.
So yeah, farming. I think farming was a good point of departure for us. You know, we know the Hapsburgs were farmers. We know a lot of the world is farming. And anyone who's ever been outside knows that farming is tough.
Right.
So, I mean, what does this big book tell us about it?
So it tells us some very important things, and this is part of the urgency of the book and the urgency of what we need to understand from this book. And so what it argues and shows evidence for is that many peoples over time, in fact, chose not to farm. They knew about farming and they decided not to farm. And sites like Göbekli Tepe, right, and others, they were made by civilizations who were foragers and what we might call hunter-gatherers. Right, so I think Engels, when you look at Engels's approach, or any approach that tries to put history into these nice little compartments, it's going to be wrong, of course with the exception of Posadism, but that is, of course, a post-terrestrial viewpoint. And so if we're limited to terrestrial history, what we see is that there really are no rules of history. And we can't just think of earlier peoples as more simple than us and just less complex, or that agriculture alone is a sign of a civilization's advancement. So the notion of having modes of production or different stages of civilization is just incorrect until, of course, we get to look at space communists really in the future. But for now,
I mean, well, you're looking at one now. I like to consider myself in that side of the world. Do you think, based on what you're looking at in this big tome and the things that you're thinking about, do you think that there is any alternative society functioning? Does the book make reference to anyone who you would say is living outside of the kind of, as you rightly portray it, sort of hegemony of choices that we actually have made as a society, as a civilization?
Yeah, so I think that the book does think that there are tons of possible futures.
Currently.
Yeah, I think that it talks about how certain civilizations and in our own, we have sometimes gotten stuck in our ways. So the question of politics becomes, how can we get unstuck? I think the authors, though, do believe that we could get unstuck, and that just as in history, there are an unimaginable amount of different ways that people lived and organized their societies. The future also holds unimaginable amounts of ways that we could organize our society. And I think
amazing stuff.
It is amazing stuff. And I think that, that's, to bring it back, that's why we have to look at the Hapsburg model, because the Hapsburgs show us one way, perhaps even one of the best ways, like monarchy, to organize society.
We're coming back here. Yeah. Look, what I will say is that, as we're seeing Europe in many ways unravel, it does become sort of amazing that there was this family who kept so many different languages and ethnicities and community of families together. There does seem to be something special, and maybe unorthodox at the heart of it. And maybe that's the point of this conversation we just had. And I think that it's really incredibly interesting stuff. What else would you like to leave us with before we close up Volume 8 of Keeping Up with the Hapsburgs and Miscellany? I'm going to throw in and Miscellany past it. Yeah.
Well, I think that what we should be keeping in mind because of this conversation and also be looking forward to in our next conversation is this idea that we can formulate our societies to be what we want them to be, and that we can really be looking at the Hapsburgs for an exemplary show of what is possible.
Yeah, and then you're going to tell us about this Reformation thing, and we're going to see what happens when a bunch of people decide to change a bunch of stuff.
Yes, we will. That is going to be very exciting.
Cool. Thank you so much, as always, for coming on the show. We appreciate your insight and your meticulous attention to detail and to the length and breadth of the historical record.
You got it.
Everyone,
for sure.
Hawley Brett.
Thank you.
Bless.
Comite, comitato, comitiet, comiteto, carul, comiti, we youngwe, submiti, we.
Thanks so much for tuning into the committee program. We know you have many options when it comes to content consumption, and we appreciate your attention to this new season with new episodes on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and at 10 p.m. Central European Time. You can support the show by becoming a member on patreon.com/the committee program. You can follow committee on Twitter, /committee pro, on YouTube, the committee program, on Instagram, the committee program, on Facebook, the committee program, and you can visit the committee program company store at tpublic.com, the committee program shop. Special thanks, as always, to our team, Xhevat Kastrati, Fiamma Meli, Jacopo Castelletti, Forrest, Lovette, and committee's deputy director, Julia Doubleday. Look alive out there. It's later than you think.
It's the end of our broadcast day. Thanks for listening. This was the 9th program in our second series. For more global infotainment from the committee program, click on the video screen right or screen left. Please like and subscribe to the committee program on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central European Time.